The results were a bit mixed with Christian Hackenberg at the helm for 3 seasons at Penn State, actually going back to 2013. We bring in Ellie Moreta-Feliz from Black Shoe Diaries to break down the Penn State quarterback situation heading into 2016. Ellie, we appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So Christian Hackenberg, 48 touchdowns, 31 interceptions in his career, brought in during a very difficult time in the program's history. Bill O'Brien and he basically as a freshman, I thought completely overachieved beyond anybody's expectations in winning 8 games. Then maybe the expectations were a little bit too high after that, and a lot of ups and downs in going 7-6 and 7-6. Your thoughts about Hackenberg and his era at Penn State?
There are a lot of opinions when it comes to Christian Hackenberg, right? Some of them are positive, some of them neutral, some of them are not as positive. I think that for what Penn State went through during his time, he did well above what anybody could have expected, right? When he had an offense that was not only at capacity but experience, he showed that he could be as good as anyone in the country. When that situation changed, not only in scheme, but also in experience and in depth, his production kind of followed. But time after time, regardless of the situation at hand, regardless of how many times he got knocked down, he just got up, didn't complain, and did what any quarterback with his poise would do. And yes, the results on the field, as you said, may have been a little bit treated unfairly because of the inflated expectations. But he still performed, in my opinion, not only to the best of his ability, but also to the best of one could have expected out of Penn State, given the situation. And I think this is where a lot of people get lost. They just kind of expected a little bit more than I think, and just the team as a whole should have done. And I personally think that, given the situation, Penn State overachieved by going 7-6 the past 2 seasons. They should have realistically had at least one losing season in there, at least one season where the offense looked more like the 2014 offense should have been the norm and not the exception. So in that regard, I think Hackenberg, there's like any better than what he did would have been the icing on the cake.
And as you well know, the offensive line situation was abysmal at times, so poor at one point because of scholarship reductions that they had to bring over a couple of defensive linemen to play offense and barely had them trained and ready to go by the season opener against Central Florida a couple of years back. So the offensive line play, not the best, and the Temple game was one of the prime examples of that as well. So Christian Hackenberg moves on, and we say he went 7-6 his final season, but didn't have a whole lot to say in the bowl game. He was just starting to get the offense going, hit on a long play downfield, and then he got hurt, unfortunately, with a shoulder injury. So that segues us nicely into Trace McSorley's situation. He steps into the Georgia game. And Ellie, it's kind of my thought in watching that game that he showed the jitters, a lot of indecisiveness, didn't play well early, but then once he started to get the feel, threw a couple late touchdown passes, made 2 long drives against that Bulldogs defense that got you back in the game and got you close to a victory. So 14 of 27 in that game with a couple touchdowns. Your thoughts about McSorley heading into August camp?
So Trace McSorley is an interesting case. He is not going to be regarded as the same way that Hackenberg was. He's not the 5-star guy coming out of high school who essentially had his pick of where to go. He doesn't have a cannon of an arm. But what he does have is he has the drive. He's a competitor. But more importantly, he fits this offense the way James Franklin sees it much better than Hackenberg does. And Hackenberg may have a great future in the NFL, but there is this faction of the population, and that includes me, that thinks McSorley may actually have more success in college because of this. Um, he even in this Georgia game, you could kind of start seeing it, that even in that offense, with that offensive line, with the play calling that may not have been perfect at times, he was still able to make things happen, right? The team goes down big early, and Hackenberg goes out with an injury, and you're thinking, okay, we're done. It's just, let's just get this game over with. And that didn't happen. McSorley made the throws. He made the plays with his feet when he needed to, and he got us to a point where we actually could have tied the game. That is something that you may see happening over and over and over as he hopefully takes over for the Nittany Lions in the fall. And you saw that again in the spring game as well. You saw him get to a point where he surveys the field, he looks to all of the plays that are available to him, and when all of those plays break down, then he takes off with his feet. That is one thing that I like about him, that he truly is a passer first, but he's not afraid to take off when he has to. And that is kind of like the centerpiece for Joe Moorhead's offense, right? You'll use the weapons around you, but when the weapons aren't there, then you kind of take over yourself. So that's the one thing that I like about Trace McSorley.
Ellie Moreta-Feliz from Black Shoe Diaries joining us to break down the Penn State quarterback situation heading into 2016. So we have McSorley. We now have Tommy Stevens, who comes in from Indiana. Kind of break down and contrast their abilities.
So they both can take over the air and with their feet. But Tommy Stevens, the difference is that he seems to be more towards the taking off with their feet, whereas McSorley seems to be more towards letting the other skilled players make the play. And the only footage we have of Tommy Stevens on the field was in the spring game. He played with the second team, so in fairness to him, he probably had the more difficult setup playing against the ones. But at the same time, every time a play would break down, it seemed like Tommy Stevens was ready to take off with his feet. So what I'd like to see in the summer is for him to kind of refine his ability to kind of survey the field before kind of taking off, and kind of make it more like what we saw from Trace McSorley, where you really saw he was a quarterback first and then a runner second. And that's where I think the competition lies right now. Franklin would have you believe that they are in dead heat and it's 50-50. But I think most of us going in kind of see it as McSorley's job to lose. And I think if Stevens is able to kind of work on that aspect of his game, kind of becoming more of a complete quarterback, he'll thrust himself into this competition and make it interesting for the entire summer.
Stevens, 24th rated dual threat quarterback, according to ESPN, coming out of the 2015 class, joined on the field also by Jake Zembiak. Probably not a factor in 2016, but down the line could be an impact player there at Penn State. Ellie Moreta-Feliz joining us from Black Shoe Diaries to break down Penn State situation at quarterback post Christian Hackenberg. Ellie, thanks so much for the time.
No problem.